Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to share this special evening with you. I feel so honored to share this podium with such amazing women. And Dolores Huerta, my mother, sends her regrets that she could not be here with us this evening as well. Tonight I was hoping to share just a few thoughts on the importance of community organizing and leadership development as you all, as legal advocates, provide the legal and advocacy services that you do. And I wanted to give you some examples. Well, we know, so we'll start with the UFW, that Cesar and Dolores faced enormous challenges and legal hurdles in their first years due to injunctions where they were basically not allowed to have picket lines anywhere but 50 feet up in the air, and other legal barriers. But thankfully there were dedicated attorneys. I don't know if any of you have volunteered with the UFW. I know Nancy, anybody else volunteer with the UFW? It seems everywhere I go, I always meet folks who volunteered in the 60s and the 70s. And thanks to those dedicated attorneys who worked for $5 a week and then got raises to $10 a week, that they were and we were, as a farm workers union, able to improve the working conditions and eventually the lives of thousands of farm workers, not just in California but throughout the country. We know that attorneys were able to help dissect what were the laws in California that needed to be adjusted, and being able to share this information with the farm workers who then advocated for the California Labor Relations Act, which gives farm workers the right to organize, and California is the only state that has that law. And once the farm workers were able to vote for a union, it was then Dolores who actually trained them how to negotiate their contracts. They were right there in the negotiating room. And so we continue to use this model with the Dolores Huerta Foundation of really empowering people to help form policies and laws that affect our lives. As Nancy said, our mission is to create networks of organized communities pursuing social justice through systemic and structural transformation. So as a nonprofit, we don't help individuals, but we really look at what are these larger kind of policy issues that we can address. We have this organization, it's called Vecinos Unidos, United Neighbors, and that's where we go into communities using the house meeting model, the same model that Cesar and Dolores were recruited by Fred Ross Sr. in the 50s. We use that model where we basically train organizers to speak to people in their homes. And we don't tell people we're training them to become organizers. We just say, can you invite friends, families, and coworkers to your home for a meeting? We have a really important message that we'd like to deliver. And once we get people in that intimate setting, we talk to them about how when folks take responsibility, when they commit to working with their neighbors, that they can make significant change. And we then give them the examples of how people just like them, immigrants, people who don't speak English, that they, poor people, right, have made significant changes and improvements in their communities. A lot of the changes are just have to do with infrastructure. In the communities where we work really look like third world, kind of communities where there were, for example, one neighborhood of about 26 residents who did not have access to the sewers, the system. So their neighbors to the left and the neighbors to the right, but this plot of land somehow did not get that connection. And because it was so expensive to constantly clean out the septic tanks, that many of them just set up makeshift outhouses outside, would use the restroom outside, and it was very dangerous, the situations that they were living in. So we were able to help them figure out how to become their own advocates. They invited the county supervisor to their neighborhood to show them exactly what the makeshift outhouses and how people were living, and were able then to put pressure on that county supervisor to get the USDA to come in and provide the money that was needed to actually provide, create and establish the sewer system. So those are, there are more examples that we have, and I actually wanted to share about two of our community leaders. Both of them are Mexican immigrant women who were both recruited through the house meeting model. Leticia Prado is a mother of two in Weed Patch, California. And who here knows where Weed Patch is? Has heard of Weed Patch? Okay, well, the Grapes of Wrath was took place in the Sunset Labor Camp, which still exists there in Weed Patch. And when I met Leticia, it was a house meeting, but it was outside of the house in this actually empty kind of dirt lot. And we were asking the community members, what improvements would you like to see in your, we'd already gone through the wrap of, how people come together and they make that commitment. And then we asked, what would you like to see? What changes would you like to see in your community? And all of them agreed that they wanted to see their schools improved. That there were issues about pesticides being sprayed on fields nearby. They weren't sure what those pesticides were and what the damage that might cause, to their children. They wanted fences around the schools because there had been some safety concerns of children just leaving campus, or strangers that shouldn't have been on campus coming on campus. And they also thought that they should have water filters with cleaner water. So we helped them form their first petition, but they're the ones who took it to the school board, presented their petitions, and the school board members said, well, we would like to help you, but we actually don't have the money. So what do you all think as community members of passing a school bond measure? And so they learned what a school bond measure was, and they said, that would be a great idea. We're happy to tax ourselves. And they went door to door, and Leticia Prado and her husband and her children, they went and spoke to all of the voters in their community, and that school bond measure passed with over 70% of the vote. And so as a result, they actually got all of the things that they had asked for, and a brand new gymnasium in their middle school, which folks from Bakersfield actually come to use their gymnasium because it's so nice. After a while, Leticia was proud of this accomplishment and continued to go to the school board meetings and decided, I can be on the other side of that school board. I should be making these decisions. What does it take to run? And so she actually ran for school board, and now is a school board member. And she also is a member of the water board in her local town as well. So she sits on two local boards, and this is just one example of the grassroots leadership, right? I also want to share about Lupe Ortiz, who's a mother and grandmother in the neighboring town of Arvin. She was also recruited in the house meeting, and I believe when she came on in 2008 is when the neighbors and community members had decided that they wanted to pass a 1-cent tax because there were services such as a fire and police that needed more funding, and so they said, okay, well, we can all tax ourselves this 1-cent tax increase. And this is a community that has 40% unemployment. Okay, most 90% of them are agricultural workers, and so they successfully passed that 1-cent tax increase. She ran for school board a few years later, and just recently the school board recognizing that they need more funding for infrastructure improvements. Some of their schools do look like jails. They asked the community, would you support a school bond measure? And they just passed another school bond measure in Arvin, California, where all of the schools will receive infrastructure improvements. In this same little town of Arvin, California, there are now 3 new city council members that are all 25 or younger have taken over, because again they have also received some leadership training and realizing, well, we can be on this board and make these decisions. And so I just wanted to share how Leticia and Lupe are just these two examples of many people's lives who are being changed and transformed as they learn how to advocate. And that, for us, is so important, that once we can teach people how government works, school boards, all of that, that they can then advocate for on the local, the state, and the national level. And just as Leticia and Lupe are teaching their children and grandchildren and being that model, my mother Dolores was that example for me. Being my first feminist teacher, she was working so hard in the union and advocating for workers' rights that she was away from home for a long time. I don't know if anybody heard the KPFA interview this morning. There was an author that was on, and she was also talking about how her parents were spent many years in jail, and how they were activists, and how and now with her own children, how she's teaching. So it was just an interesting thing, which reminded me a lot about, you know, our family and raising my children as well. But and the funny story is that my mom was gone so much that I actually used to call my dad Mama. He was my mama. So, but the thing about Dolores and her accomplishments is that when she started lobbying in the 1960s, pre-UFW, she was working for an organization that her and Cesar were both members of, the Community Service Organization. She was just one of 2 female lobbyists in Sacramento, and at that time women still had to wear skirts to go into the Capitol. So of course there was a lot of sexism and harassment that she experienced, but that didn't stop her. She negotiated contracts with growers, led national boycotts, became a national spokesperson for the most impoverished workers, and her example of her dragging us everywhere, literally on the weekends. We did, you know, we weren't involved in organized sports, or I tried to, you know, take ballet, and that didn't work because that was just too structured. And no, our weekends were really all about marches, and they didn't sit there and tell us about, you know, social justice or political theory. It was really just leading by example. And so that's what I'm trying to do with my children as well, and I'll encourage you all to do the same with the young people in your lives. One thing that is really important to us is that, and what Leticia and Lupe learned, is how we hold our elected officials accountable, right? And so we teach people that we hire elected officials on election day, and we can also fire them when they don't come through for us. And I wanted to share a current battle that we're in Kern County. We're facing an education crisis. Kern High School District is the largest high school district in California, and it has a racially and ethnically diverse student population. 62% of the students are Latinos, 25% are white, and 6% are African American. However, Kern High School District has the highest rates of suspension and expulsion. We are we're 4 times above the state average and 7 times above the national average of suspensions and expulsions. And guess who the majority of those students are who are getting suspended and expelled? Latinos and African Americans. African American students are expelled at 500% above the national norm, and Latinos at 400%. So when this was brought to our attention a few years ago, of course, you know, we hopped on it to find out, okay, what's going on, because our organization, although we had helped, you know, the vecinos and supported them in their different fights for education improvement, this was something where we realized, wow, we have a serious crisis on our hands. And so parents and youth for the last couple of years have been advocating for alternative discipline methods. We know that these racist practices of the Kern High School District can't continue. And we also know that there are alternative discipline methods that are being used in other places. Oakland, Los Angeles, throughout California and the country, programs called Positive Behavior Intervention Supports and Restorative Justice, which another speaker was on KPFA this morning as I was driving in to the city talking about restorative justice. So although we have been advocating, we don't feel that the Kern High School District Board is actually taking us serious enough. And so last October, we actually filed a lawsuit. And we're working with several public interest legal firms that are that have filed this lawsuit based on racial bias. And so we hope that we succeed, but we know that we can't just depend on that lawsuit. So we're continuing to work with students and parents on community organizing and making sure that we still have this consistent presence at school board meetings, and that during the elections, when we have when they're up for re-election, that they are out there educating their neighbors and local voters about opportunities. So in November, we were community members were able to vote one ally onto the board. So we have 1 out of 5. So anyways, long ways to go, but we of course are gonna hang in there. And working with our attorneys is a very I think complicated process. There's a lot of legalese that goes into it, and so it has been our responsibility as a Dolores Huerta Foundation to help community members understand what's going on, but then also to make sure that their input is provided. And so just wanted to kind of drop that seed, as you all continue your work, to really partner with community leaders and advocates, and making sure that the community members are right along with you in your legal fights, for policy victories and all of that, because we know that legally we can accomplish amazing victories, but these victories are even stronger when community members are able to provide that input and can consult throughout that process, right? We've formed the Kern Education Justice Collaborative, and we have a variety of community members, including teachers, because we think that this is a great thing to do, but if the teachers are going to have to implement these alternative methods, we want to make sure that it's something that they are agreeing to. And so anyway, so this is just, I wanted to share, the current battle that we are in here in Central Valley of California. The farm worker struggle continues, and just like IANGEL and all the great work that you're doing, we can all support each other. So I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing, and the women who are empowered, right? Once they get employed and become these leaders, and really then teaching them the next steps, right? How to become advocates, and then going on, moving up, hopefully, to these local boards, state boards. Dolores was speaking to a group of college students, and she, in every college that she goes to, she encourages young people to think about running for office, especially women, because there was a survey done at an Ivy League college, and they asked the young men, how many of you feel prepared to run for office? And 80% of them said yes, I'm prepared. And how many women do you think, when they asked the young girls, the students, the young women, how many do you think said that they felt that they were prepared? 30% of the young women felt that they were prepared. So we have a lot of work to do, right, to really have women understand their power, and to really take that power, and we will continue to do the work that we do, right, to be those examples. So thank you everybody for everything that you do. I want to end with a couple of vivas. If Dolores is here, that's how she would end. And so vivas, long live, and so we're going to do Viva la Mujer, and I'm going to say Viva la Mujer, and everybody say Viva. Viva. Okay. Hold on, and then we're going to do Viva la Justicia, long live justice, and Viva IANGEL. That we continue to support this amazing organization and have many more celebrations and anniversaries. And then we'll end with Si Se Puede, it can be done. And this is a term that Dolores coined in a strike. A lot of people think Camila Chavez came up with Si Se Puede, but it was really Dolores. And she likes to brag how that President Obama, when they met, he said, "Hey, I stole your slogan," and she said, "Yes, you did." Anyway, so I'll start off with "Viva la mujer!"
Viva!
All right. Viva la justicia!
Viva!
Viva IANGEL!
Viva!
And we'll end with a Si se puede, an organized unity clap, because we know that working together we will succeed. So,
Si se puede, si se puede.